Hello, and welcome back to another chapter of Heroes and Hermits by Algonaver. I'm so sorry about the butchering. On AO3, Chapter 4. Impulse thought his day was going great. He woke up, ate some delicious pasta, reunited with Scar, a decently calm day that led to an opportunity, and now they had a perfect deal on the table. It was a literal table, and a big one at that. The room itself was kind of plain. Scar had already complained to him earlier about the unimaginative architecture in the school, and interiors were just as empty and sterile. Impulse thought them just fine. Not everything had to be a piece of art to be functional. To sit at this table meant they were surrounded by strangers, possible future enemy. Blah, blah, blah. To sit at this table meant they were surrounded by strangers, possible future allies. Principal Nezu's circle of trusted people. They will be introduced to all faculty members later, Nezu assured them. But only people in this room will actually know of their true identities, all in the name of maintaining the status quo. Impulse understand that to them, it was just as much of an interest to create this alliance because it was a way of containing invaders. Hermits had a chance to discuss this in a private chat through messaging. It was Impulse who insisted on keeping information about them hidden and limited, not sharing everything, even with allies, in case they would turn against them. He emphasized the importance of keeping those with power away. Who knows what kind of forces this world could hide? Sure, should they catch interest of such forces, and they might never get back home. They might as well be trapped here already, all alone and defenseless here. Scar disagreed with him because that is exactly what he wanted, to get to the highest league. This would give them all resources needed to plan their way home, the power to achieve greater things within a shorter time, and they could use the school as a starter platform. But if Impulse knew one thing, it was that letting Scar near a position of power without supervision will lead to a disaster. Impulse did not count himself as a good enough handler for him. In the meeting, they stuck to Impulse's plan, agreeing that they would try out riskier things if someone capable will join them. Until then, they'll make sure to put a paragraph ensuring secrecy of their story into the agreement with UA. This would make some teachers suspicious, of course, but Shark can sugarcoat it enough with his smooth talking to distract them. There was only one step left. Talking to the detective guy Nezu invited. Naomasu Tsukachi. He introduced himself in the beginning of their meeting. Others in the room were teachers of all shapes and colors, with very fitting aliases. It was good that they had shorter names that they could use. Scar personally thought that name like All Might was much cooler than Toshinori Yagi. Sadly, the name did not match the picture. The guy looked more like one of Cleo's creations than anything else. Among them, this police guy was definitely the outlier. I know you two have already stated your names for a police report, but can you repeat them for me, please? He was sitting close to Impulse, just a chair away, so Impulse could see his papers with Japanese letters on them. It wasn't anything helpful, really, just a fact of irritation and inconvenience. I'm Impulse SV. I'm Good Times with Scar. Please know that you do get multiple good times with me instead of one like my name on paper implies. Great. Sakachi nodded and asked Impulse a second later, what does the SV part stand for? Impulse scratched his cheek in thought and hesitantly answered, these are my initials for my, how do I put it? It's not something I usually explain to people, so, like, you guys have two names, one personal and one for the family. Where I'm from, we have a short name for regular use, like mine is Impulse, and then there's a business name. We don't share it usually, but I included initials of it into my everyday name, so it could be used for less important business. It's hard to explain. Well, I need you to give me a straightforward reply. Others in the room murmured in agreement. Clearly, they hadn't caught on Impulse's tone. So Scar took it upon himself to explain. I can give you an example. See, it's easy if we create an analogy. Imagine that you have your house. You have your address that you can give to people so they can come over for a visit. Impulse is like that. And you also have your boss, to whom you give your house keys because they live in your basement, so they can annoy you about deadlines and monthly reports. That's the SV part. What? Scar, you're only making it worse, you lunatic! Impulse was holding off his awkward laughing, while others in the room were now either scared or perplexed. I just think some people need to be more open-minded towards people with bosses in their basements. Imagine all the stress and loss of privacy. That's why. Let's just move on. Scar was interrupted by the detective, who voiced the next question. What's your last memory before waking up in Japan? Man's whole face was making Scar feel vulnerable. He wasn't a master at reading people, usually just brute forcing his way with fast words and a charming smile. So this whole conversation was him at a disadvantage. Who was he if he thought to interrupt Scar's speech? They have to move on now. With Scar making a small dent in the psyche of Tsukachi, humble beginnings. They told him of their last memories, with many friends around them, laughter and shouting. Scar described the Bodum Mountain project of a gigabase, though he was sure they were holding a meeting for a different reason. Impulse said that when he woke up, he only remembered it as a Bodum crew meeting, not a server-wide one. He was working on the factory insides when he was specifically called to a Bodum meeting. No, my friend. I'm sure I saw both Joe and Cleo there, too, said Scar. And then Exuma was sitting in the highest boat and clapping. Don't know why, but, oh, well, good for them, I guess. I recall hearing clapping noises, just, thought of them in a different context. Impulse said it with another scratch on his cheek. What was it? Allergy or what? His words, meanwhile, made Scar snicker. Yeah, so it was a server meeting then. Right, and then I woke up here. That's it. Then tell me about yourselves. What do you do for a living? For a living? Asked Scar. So, like, a job? I own a shop. Traveling shop called Swaggin. I too own a couple shops. Many people on Hermitcraft do. And I'm in the process of building a candy factory, though it is a slow process. Tsukachi had a lot of questions following these ones. Impulse could honestly say he never said so much about himself in a single sentence. Who were his friends, what he liked to do, where he lived, and one question in particular made him feel even more exposed. Do you have any powers, like our quirks, you've been told about? It took them both a while to come up with a coherent reply that won't reveal too much. Scar was the first to say, I can bend ground to change shape and somewhat control plants. Makes building easier, you know? The terraforming parts. The build itself I can create manually. A simple truth. It's small and inoffensive. It was like feeding your local murder of crows to tame them so they won't attack your crops. Give up a little bit to win in the long run. Scar had these in Impulse's opinion. Magic can do anything. So whatever he makes up will work and be the truth. Well, he had to open up about his nature to a stranger. I can grow earthbound materials on my skin, sometimes. Rocks, copper, amethyst, many things. Is there a limit to it? Asked one of the teachers, Aizawa. Kind of. I turn into, something not as pretty as I am now. Impulse turned his eyes away, tracing lines on the floor with his stare. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Scar reached out to him and said, Well, I think you're gorgeous in all shapes. Actually, ask Corellis. It's a scientific fact that you have a beautiful face. They were done with interrogations after that. Nezu was eager to sign the contract after they've spent around 2 hours discussing it. They, meaning Scar and Nezu, because Impulse already lost any strings connecting their dialogue. To him, Scar sounded like a madman, talking and talking with euphemisms and sly remarks, stretching minutes of just words. It made him sleepy. Heading to bed after this affair would be a good decision. It has been a long day for Impulse. Though he still has to put his signature on the paper. He was given the pen. Scar was smiling. 5 seconds to sign, scribbling down his name. And then Scar stood up and walked forward, outstretching his hand. Nezu and him completed the handshake. As they were walking down the hall to go outside for some fresh air, one of the teachers walked past them and blocked their way. Scar knew this Aizawa guy just for a couple hours. His piercing eyes and unkempt hair, the baggy dark clothes and low voice. But that told him enough. Good evening, sir. Is there something you want to talk about? Asked Impulse, as the less patient one, whose energy meter was about to hit an all-time low. Aizawa took a second to reply, prolonging the uncomfortable tight smile Impulse had to keep up. How am I supposed to trust you if you can betray us any minute? I'm impressed with how you managed to get in and get yourselves on Nezu's good side, he finally said. Oh, well, Scar took the lead, stepping closer to the teacher. We are playing by gentlemen's rules. Betrayal would be dishonorable. And I cherish my honor because I watched Mulan. So, just so you know, I am not the type of guy to turn on my friends. And we want to be friends who help each other, don't we? Aizawa made an unambiguous hum and turned around, ready to leave them alone. Impulse never knew how Scar twisted everything so perfectly, even convincing this creepy dude to go away. Finally, this tension was starting to hurt his poor neck. Now they were on their way outside again. And then, windows on their right lit up. The sun was back up. They squinted at it in surprise, but their eyes quickly adjusted to the new lighting. Huh, thought Impulse. Those guys never mentioned having control over their world in any capacity. And with their genuine confusion about basically anything familiar to him, it would seem this could be one of two options. Either they somehow can do it the same way by different means, or it was one of the Hermits who did that. That gave them a hint, at least. At first, they had to take care of one horrified local, Eraserhead, the previously unemotional guy with apathetic voice now stood frozen in place, his wide-open red eyes never leaving the window. Right. Dude, you've got to blink. Impulse lightly pushed him on the shoulder, making Aizawa literally shake as he tried to stay balanced on his feet. Impulse stood by his side with an amused grin, until his comm started to buzz. 2 buzzes. 2 messages. With Aizawa looking away, he sneaked a glance at it and turned it on. Good times with Scar. Bring him back to the meeting room. Good times with Scar. Need to put on some makeup. Quickly, his eyes shoot up to the window, where he could see Scar walking away. Turning around, he saw only thin air, and his friend seemingly vanished. What Impulse caught in the reflection was Scar's human disguise shifting away. Definitely not something they wanted others to see. It happened when Cub was in the car. Not his car. No, not yet. They were handier than horses, for sure, but had zero charm to them. Just another brilliant piece of technology. Just another thing to use. The sun. The sun rose once again, in a blink of an eye. He felt it with his whole being, a moment before it actually happened. His driver was not freaking out, unlike people on the streets. Tokyo was usually loud. That much he gathered in just one day. Of course, these people were afraid of the unknown. The sun was a constant for them, the cycle older than the humanity itself. And one of his fellow hermits already had it broken for them. Not just one of them, though. Cub looked down at his arm, his communicator resting on under a sleeve of a suit he borrowed from a new business partner. To do something like that, you have to have enough authority on the server, know what command to type in, and have proper tool. Unless you were BOO, who only needed a bed to perform a time change. But Cub knew the difference, and this was the work of an admin typing in a command. The change in the air wasn't as smooth as it would be with magic. Leaning back in his seat, he ran a finger against the back of the seat in front, outlining a seam on its leather coat. It had a rough texture, making him think of a horse saddle. His mind was chasing an answer to this, methodically coming closer to a conclusion. / time set day. Was that what happened? Cub was fighting the doubt in his gut. This was not something Zuma would do if they woke up in an unfamiliar world. They would know how to get out of here and would not hesitate to teleport everyone back. No, this person was scared. Trying out a new power to see if it would work. Hermits were a mysterious bunch. Plenty of them could have gone through the admin training. Cub immediately thought of his co-operators on Hermitcraft. Back there, any one of them could have done it. They had a permission level of 3, granting them almost full-on admin status. The time-set command only required level 2. Here in Japan, Cub had nothing close to even that, meaning others couldn't have done it. Was his initial suspicion wrong, and this world had its own operator hiding somewhere? This game just became a detective story, thought Cub. With a curious smile, he couldn't help it. He loved a good mystery. Cub wanted to find and meet the person with this power. They could protect themselves, sure, with any type of command they wanted. And Cub was alone. He wasn't a fool to try and fight them. No. He would recruit them. Admins were usually pretty resistant to magic. So there would have to be a clever, careful approach, once he got his hands on an ally with that sort of power, or simply their special communicator with a built-in backdoor to the code of the world. Cub would know what to do. The driver was silent as they stopped in front of a building. It was a meeting place with his new business partner, not the same one he borrowed a suit and a scar from. Cub's circle of new friends was quickly growing thanks to one simple principle. The higher in the world you go, the more connected with each other people are. So when he got his hands on one local company's shareholder, he effectively got his hands on all of his colleagues and underlings. The more the merrier. Inside the hall, he had to rely on directions given to him at the front desk. Walking around the building, he had time to appreciate the local design. Minimalistic and bland, yet still looking expensive. Cub preferred a more textured look for his spaces. In his opinion, vibes and function are inherently connected. He just won't be able to work in a place that doesn't radiate style and vibes. People here were much more vibrant and interesting than their surroundings. There was a disconnect between them and their world, leading Cub to develop a few theories, one of which turned out to be true. When we started researching history in his spare time, can't appear clueless in front of his partners, after all. So in his research, he found out that this diversity in the world was a fairly recent development, plagued with conflicts and societal splits. Quarks came and changed the world from a uniform humanity. Everything had to be built in a rush to accommodate growing population and be generic enough for an average consumer. It wasn't a bad thing in its own. The problem was that there were too many people. 8 billion of them, jeez. Cub was in a meeting room now, filled with people who were his tickets to the top. He had no need for magic to charm them. His experience and knowledge were the main selling point here. Standing in front of a whiteboard, with a blue marker in his hand, Cub could feel it slipping away from his grip because his hands were sweaty. His fingers were strained to hold the marker tight, to not mess up under the pressure. All the eyes in the room were on him when he introduced himself with a slight bow. For them, he was an American investor looking for profits on the new market. To them, he looked young and energetic, naive and hopeful. His witty replies and snarky comments were just American enough to fool them, and his handsome face was trustworthy enough to land him a successful contract. First steps were always the hardest to make. Next, after the meeting, he was called out to a couple of men whose eyes he caught on himself during the introduction the most. They were part of the Neurat company. If he could recall correctly, though its role in the market he did not know, well, could be an opportunity to find out. They were extra intense during their more personal discussion, making Cub's insides all clench with growing alarm. Must be all that time he spent on the hermit craft making him weaker. Not weaker in a powerful sense, more like he got rusty. And now simple glances and weird smiles were getting to him more than he would like to admit. Commercial world outside of his home was cruel and aggressive. If he was avoiding using too much magic to stay in control and avoid attracting suspicion, he would have to use other available methods in order to progress. Maybe attracting some more positive attention to his person was a good thing in the long run, although it did not ease his tension. One of them was talking about support items their company produced for heroes, and leaning too big close to Cub's liking. He kept his composure despite the sudden closeness being not something he usually dealt with. Long before that, in worlds long left behind, it was Scar who thrived in those types of interactions, and always came out victorious. He always had a talent for personal interactions in business, while Cub reveled in numbers and resources. All of this was meant to be happening in the evening, but due to the night skip, it was lunchtime when Cub was finally free. It stung him ever so slightly that it was his face that caught their attention and not his speech, but he will take that win anyway. Money is money, and if he wanted to change anything, he would need a lot of money. If a pretty human facade was the key for it, so be it. The thought did nothing for his composure, though. Feeling the eyes on his skin. Ugh. Abominable. Walking into the bathroom and shutting the door, Cub all but wanted to scrape off his skin in annoyance. How did Scar put up with that kind of attention? To calm down, he washed his face and hands with cold water. It burned his skin with painful but grounding shock. Leaning on the sink with one hand, he ran the other through his carefully put together hair and took a few deep breaths. He wanted to take off the jacket to cool down a bit more, but he couldn't force his hands to touch the buttons. He could still sense those damn humans staring, prying into him, as if they could see through his facade. So, be done with it. He forcefully tore off his human disguise, peeling the outer layer of magic and drawing a sigh of relief as it melted away. Opening his eyes and looking at the mirror, he saw himself smiling. Oh, how much easier it was to breathe without the strange constant magic used to keep up his appearance. And taking off the tight jacket, he could let out his shimmering wings and bend down into the sink, pressing against its coldness, both wet and cold. Like his canyon base during a night, its familiarity and comfort let his worries step aside. With his wings, the walls were nothing. He could go anywhere, kill those humans, do whatever he desired, get all their money for himself, and be the admin this world so desperately needed. Cub shivered in the cold. Scar shivered in the cold. He lifted his head from where he was splashing it with water in the sink and stared at his hands. In the cool light of the bathroom, his light blue skin was even more unsettling. And yet, there was something else worrying him. Under the surface, like anxiety that won't let you fall asleep until you are absolutely sure there were no monsters nearby. That sudden tug on his core. It was a call, a desperate cry. It was Cub, pulling for him, yearning. Scar knew it. Turning off the water and putting his shirt back on. He knew it. Cub was here. With them. It might have been him who changed the time. Was he in danger? Scar gave up on buttoning his shirt, his fingers too numb to function. He gave a quick glance at the mirror, and a wave of glamour covered his skin in one layer. Scar hoped it was correct, since he did not have time or patience to fix it. He ran out of the bathroom and took off back to the room where Impulse hopefully held their new friends distracted. He didn't know how long he spent in the bathroom, but probably not too long. Yeah, Impulse was handling this pretty well. Scar opened the door and his ears were not immediately attacked by screaming, so he assumed it was fine. People were standing in front of tall windows and staring outside like they were looking at it for the first time. The Aizawa dude was still looking rough with coffee in his right hand. There were more cups on the table, all filled with kinds of drinks. By his own seat stood a cup of tea, still steaming and smelling wonderfully. "Welcome back," said Impulse, turning around in his seat. "Are you... Oh, dude, what happened?" "Cub's here! Not like here, but in this world!" Scar sat down beside him and took a sip of tea. "What?" exclaimed Impulse. Scar's arrival prompted others to turn around, and one of them, Flag King, asked, "One of your friends, huh? How'd you know?" I felt it with my soul would be cheesy and stupid, thought Scar, so he answered, He sent a signal, one that only I can get." They were still shaken by the sudden time change. Teachers had to go to their students who lived in the dorm to calm them down. They can't share Impulse's explanation of it, but they could help their students to take it easier. Scar wasn't there to hear the explanation himself, but Impulse shared it later, when they were told to go to their room and rest. It was a night technically. Sleeping in the middle of the afternoon was not an option for Scar, though Impulse really could use some of that with how tired his eyes were. Scar closed the blinds to block out the sunlight so that Impulse would be more comfortable in his sleep. His friend was curled up on the bed, already out of this world. Scar leaned on the corner of the wall by the window, careful not to tug on the blinds. He won't be able to fall asleep right now. Strangely, he felt as if someone were staring at him, as if whoever they were, they could see right through his facade. Cub was on his way to the office he rented for his company to get his plans sorted and maybe catch some sleep in a chair. He had no rest since the moment he woke up in Japan, and his brain was already feeling funny. With what happened in the meeting made him realize his head needed some refreshing before any productive work can be done. His hands were yet to stop shaking, and his throat was sore. Was he getting sick already? He dismissed his driver and climbed the steps to enter an office building when his comm buzzed. Stopping dead in his tracks, Cub immediately lifted his arm. He could barely believe it. This sound meant he had a message. Full symmetry. Will you look at that? Full symmetry. Cub, you... Full symmetry. I can see your name tag across the street. All of his previous plans were abandoned completely, and he turned around to see some recreational buildings on the other side of the road. He can't read the signs, but posters with food and alcohol bottles were a universal thing. False must have had a map opened on her comm as she saw his name on it. Dang it. And he never even thought of checking it. He just assumed it wouldn't work in a new world and never tried it. Cub really should sleep more. His little run across the street was not at all fitting for a man in a black suit with a tie. But who cared anyway? He had a friend to meet. And the best one he could meet at a time like that. He didn't need more chaos. And False was as stable as they get on Hermitcraft. No arson, no thievery, no debauchery, just some casual violence. Through the window of a bar, he could see her sitting at a table. As he entered, he was not surprised to see an unconscious man at the same table opposite her, completely blacked out. Once False spotted his approach, she rose from her seat. She was just as he'd last seen her. Striped shirt with a green jacket thrown on top, brown shorts, and those over-the-top combat boots she adored. Her goggles were stuffed in a pocket of her shorts, and her head looked unusually empty without them. When they hugged, reunited, it was the warmest he felt since arriving here. She smelled of home and mushrooms, probably from those that grew in her cave base, reminding him of Season 7's shopping district. Even when they terraformed the entire place and all the mycelium was gone, it still retained that mushroom smell. So, yeah, he got pretty nostalgic pretty quickly. False had the softest hair ever, and he lamented having to let go of their hug. Hey there, crying on my shoulder? It's too early for that, don't you think? She patted him on the back, and then they slowly separated, sitting down side by side on a soft seat. Cub used a napkin to wipe away the tears, which she didn't even notice were forming. A bit of crying, a healthy emotional response. For some time now, he wasn't feeling all too like himself, like he was watching a movie instead of his own life. Understanding only came to him once he saw a piece of his normal life, the barrier that separated him from the foreign world cracked. And is it too early to find dead man by your side? He asked quietly. There weren't that many people in the bar, likely scared away because of a sudden daytime. Of course, False was casual about the whole thing. He could see a half-finished drink, a plate of fish on her table. She seemed to be doing fine, although Cub felt better to be by her side, to know that they both could take care of each other now, strength in numbers. He brought me a drink, then he got sleepy. Her reply had such a calm tone, it made Cub doubt if it was sarcastic or not. I didn't mind since I was quite hungry after a day in this Japan place. Okay, then, finish your meal and let's go to my base, if you don't object. He took a piece of fish that was cut in strips and tried it. The smell was intriguing him, and the taste was wonderful. He disliked when fish had too much seasoning, drowning out its natural flavor. False did the same thing, and in one gulp finished her drink. Nah, I'm very much without a plan here. Surprised that you managed to get a base so quickly. And that fancy-looking suit, too? Bubba would be jealous if he saw you. Thank you. It was politely borrowed for forever to me by a new business associate. Can't be walking around in a lab coat. People will know who I am in a second. She huffed in response, taking another bite of fish. I mean, between you and Doc, sorry, pal, but he gets more style points for that mad naked chest and cybernetics all over. You have to up your game to be a real crazy scientist. Your previous face at least had a beard to match. Now you look like a medical student. Well, looked like when you had your lab coat. Really now? It hurts, Falsey, you know? We have different flavors to our science. I am an evil CEO entrepreneur. Doc's a maniacal madman genius. And Zedov is a wild, extravagant inventor. See, we're like candy, all tasty in their own way. Please tell me your base is not a lab. I don't want to breathe in any suspicious chemicals. Cub let out a chuckle and shook his head. For now, at least. No, it's an office, spacious, a little bland at the moment, but I'm not going to be there for long. I've got some plans in mind on how to find others. We can talk about it when we get to the base. She sighed and flexed her shoulders, signaling to Cub to stand up. All right then, let's go. I have some questions I want you to answer, and I think you can guess what they're about. False Symmetry was well known among the Hermits to be quite a survivor. Not counting her experience in hardcore Hermits, she went through the nether wastes of a life before finally finding peace. Considering who else might have encountered her instead of her, Cub thought False was a perfect partner for a situation like this. She was skilled, cautious, but daring. And they've worked well as a team in the past. Mojang be damned if he had to partner up with the likes of Zombie Cleo. Tragedy would be imminent. He could see the news articles, new month. Thousands dead, millions injured. Yeah, Cleo would crush him into fine dust, either with her clever jabs or with her snappy mood. Thank all those higher beings for False gracing his path today. They left the bar just as the afternoon breeze was starting to pick up. A nice change from stuffy air inside. Cub missed the quiet of his home. Everything in Tokyo was too crowded and noisy. His ears were still ringing from that time he was stuck in traffic on the way here. What a wild day he had, huh? And that is the end of chapter 4.